Restreaming is now on, and we are here on Wednesday morning at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church and continuing in our journey to read almost line by line, chapter by chapter through the Bible, the version of the Bible that the Protestant Church claims as authoritative in some fashion. And we're trying to listen to it. We're trying to hear what it has to say. We are in Jeremiah, and today I think we are doing chapter 4 of Jeremiah. So, the first part of this is a continuation of chapter 3, but we'll see how it shifts gears. These are always long chapters. Jeremiah has a lot to say. So who's reading today?
I guess I am.
I guess it's you.
Okay. I just got to get
Did you get this?
4, not 24, but 4. All right. If you return, O Israel, says the Lord, if you return to me, if you remove your abominations from my presence and do not waver, and if you swear, as the Lord lives, in truth, in justice, and in uprightness, the nations shall be blessed by you, and by you they shall boast. For thus says the Lord to the people of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, break up your fallow ground and do not sow among thorns. Circumcise yourselves to the Lord. Remove the foreskin of your hearts, O people of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, or else my wrath will go forth like fire and burn with no one to quench it, because of the evil of your doings. Declare in Judah and proclaim in Jerusalem, and say, blow the trumpet through the land. Shout aloud and say, gather together and let us go into the fortified cities. Raise a standard toward Zion. Flee for safety. Do not delay, for I am bringing evil from the north and a great destruction. A lion has gone up from its thicket. A destroyer of nations has set out. He has gone out from his place to make your land a waste. Your cities will be ruins without inhabitant. Because of this, put on sackcloth, lament and wail. The fierce anger of the Lord has not turned away from us. On that day, says the Lord, courage shall fail the king and the officials. The priests shall be appalled and the prophets astounded. Then I said, Lord God, how utterly you have deceived this people and Jerusalem, saying, it shall be well with you, even while the sword is at the throat. At that time it will be said to this people and to Jerusalem, a hot wind comes from me out of the bare heights, in the desert toward the daughter of my people, not to winnow or cleanse, a wind too strong for that. Now it is I who speak in judgment against them. Look, he comes up like clouds, his chariots like the whirlwind, his horses are swifter than eagles. Woe to us, for we are ruined. O Jerusalem, wash your heart clean of wickedness, so that you may be saved. How long shall your evil schemes lodge within you? For a voice declares from Dan and proclaims disaster from Mount Ephraim. Tell the nations, here they are. Proclaim against Jerusalem. Besiegers come from a distant land. They shout against the cities of Judah. They have closed in around her like watchers of a field, because she has rebelled against me, says the Lord. Your ways and your doings have brought this upon you. This is your doom, how bitter it is. It has reached your very heart. My anguish, I writhe in pain. Oh, the walls of my heart is beating wildly. I cannot keep silent, for I fear the sound of the trumpet, the alarm of war. Disaster overtakes disaster. The whole land is laid waste. Suddenly my tents are destroyed, my curtains in a moment. How long must I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? For my people are foolish, they do not know me. They are stupid children, they have no understanding. They are skilled in doing evil, but do not know how to do good. I looked on the earth, and it was complete chaos, and to the heavens, and they had no light. I looked on the mountains, and they were quaking, and all the hills moved to and fro. I looked, and there was no one at all, and all the birds of the air had fled. I looked, and the fruitful land was a desert, and all its cities were laid in ruins before the Lord, before his fierce anger. For thus says the Lord, the whole land shall be a desolation, yet I will not make a full end. Because of this the earth shall mourn, and the heavens above grow black. For I have spoken, I have purposed, I have not relented, nor will I turn back. At the noise of horseman and archer, every town takes to flight. They enter thickets, they climb among rocks. All the towns are forsaken, and no one lives in them. And you, O desolate one, what do you mean that you dress in crimson, that you deck yourself with ornaments of gold, that you enlarge your eyes with paint? In vain you beautify yourself. Your lovers despise you, they seek your life. For I heard a cry as of a woman in labor, anguish as of one bringing forth her first child, the cry of daughter Zion, gasping for breath, stretching out her hands. Woe is me, I am fainting before killers. Just what we need to cheer us up today.
Sister.
I always go back in this series of reading through both Isaiah and Jeremiah. I just wish that in the writing they were more specific. Like, I get it. There's something to be angry about, and there's all kinds of descriptions about the consequences of something.
I was going to say, that's pretty specific.
Of something? Yeah, very specific.
Right.
But, could you have spent one or two sentences
Saying what
being a little more concrete about what you mean by, I'm all in favor of what Jeremiah and God are upset about.
Mm-hmm.
In truth, in justice, and in uprightness, then nations shall be blessed by him, and by him they shall boast. So the him is Israel, a person's name for a nation. If you remove your abominations, what is
the abomination?
What are the abominations?
They don't
Come
specify.
on.
I guess they assumed that the people they were addressing were aware. But if they were, they certainly weren't changing their ways. So
No, it's just like there's so much description around the events that Jeremiah is upset about and that God evidently is supposed to be upset about. And there's all kinds of consequences coming, but what? I mean, I hear it in the, there's no truth, there's no justice, and no uprightness, the abominations, but I don't get even beyond that. I don't.
Are we supposed to look at the long view? This is, what, between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Are we supposed to look at, well, there'll be a blessing to other nations now? Or in the future? Or, it could be a different timeline than we're thinking here.
Yeah. But this, even in verse 14, wash your hearts clean of wickedness.
Yeah.
What?
What did
How
you
long
do?
shall your evil schemes lodge within you? What are you talking about?
I think they're going back to you must have done something wrong, and if I see anything at all, that counts, and you all are condemned, no matter, whether you're an infant in your mother's arms or, somebody who's been around a long time, it doesn't matter.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe the theology is in reverse. Instead of there's bad behavior, or there's upsetting behavior, unjust behavior. Therefore, look, these armies are bearing down on you now.
But
And-
yeah, and I just think it's assuming again
Right.
that if you've done anything wrong, even if it's just something minor that someone has caught, that's the reason for another world power coming down. That's what empires do.
Yeah.
And that, does it necessarily mean that you've done something wrong? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. And there's an assumption too, there's an idea about how the world works, that if an empire rises against you and they're successful, it's because you had a weakness. And the weakness was you didn't fulfill the thing that gives you strength. The thing that gives you strength. But that's not consistent with, I want to say, Jewish or Israel, the Hebrews' theology. Because eventually it comes around to God accomplishes God's work and will through the weak ones, through the ones who have no defense, and that instead of it being a sign of punishment, it's just a sign of how wicked the oppressors are.
Right. It's always the story in the Bible that the least becomes the
Yeah,
chosen,
yeah.
the last born instead of the firstborn.
Right.
All of those stories must have meaning. So, some of these passages are hard to figure out. Unfortunately, like you said, we don't know what specifically.
What are they being accused of? Because even now, I mean, it's a leap maybe to make this very contemporary, but here we are. We're in a day that Jeremiah could be describing exactly. You got not the forces of another nature, but you have the forces of another nation. You have the forces of nature bearing down on a highly developed, important part of our way of life. And it's sure destruction is coming. And people are fleeing. In here, the people are fleeing because they see that the signs are coming that these nations, the neighboring nations are coming and they're going to invade them, and they don't have any defense. So isn't this very contemporary? Now, the question then is, what are we, people of faith, what are we to make of it? And that to me is where, boy, we just go off in 100 different directions. What are we to make of it? Are we to make of it and we say, you know what, this is nature, this is what happens, we don't need to think of anything? Or do we take the, quote, spiritual inventory like they did, when New Orleans was destroyed and go, well, it's a city of sin. I mean, this. Or do we look at it and go, okay, climate scientists have been telling us, and telling us, and telling us, and now the consequences of what we're doing and the way we live are beginning. They're just beginning to land on us. What are we to do? How are we to hear this? Or do we just ignore it and go, well, I had a philosophy professor who I didn't really care much for in college, but he said that life is like this. It's like you're walking along and you come to a stairway and you trip, you fall down the steps, you get to the bottom of it and you stand up, you dust yourself off and go, well, glad that's over with.
I'm
And you move on.
Go on.
This thing of hand-wringing or looking for first causes or forget about it. Just, today we have to try to do what we can do to get out of the way of the storm. 2 days from now, we'll pick up the pieces and figure out how to move on. Don't be making big moral lessons out of it. I don't know. I really don't know.
You can make a big moral lesson out of it.
Oh, yes, you can.
And then you can look at the political storm that's coming and all these other things we're worried about. And there's always a case to be made about, immorality.
Oh, yeah. I mean, whence comes wars and fightings among us, for the last 20 years of my life, I've been very news conscious. Ever since 9/11, actually. One of the things that it changed about my life was I never wanted to be a as ignorant as I had been then about the circumstances of the world, about who nations are and what they do. So I began a journey of learning. But I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know anymore. It'll work itself out. Somebody will come along.
Sometimes there's something that you can do.
Yeah, I believe that.
And if you can, try to do it. If there is nothing that you can do, just keep in your heart what you feel is right and stick by that. I do believe in God. I do believe in continuing to believe in God, even if everything in the world or my world goes wrong. It doesn't mean necessarily that I did something awful to displease God. It is what it is.
Yeah, and when I get in the mood to do that, there's always plenty in the inventory for me to think is what I'm responsible for.
Who has no blame?
No.
No one. So
it works when the blaming, controlling preachers get into the pulpit of all religions, and they tap into what they know is true, and that is, if you're honest, you know darn well why these bad things are coming into your life. You don't have to tell anybody, but I know.
But that's ridiculous and then they take it to extreme and it becomes laughable.
Yes.
What's her name?
It's
Marjorie?
interesting. It's interesting you mentioned 9/11. I just finished listening to Bruce Feiler's book on Abraham, and he ends it with the 9/11 and saying that in the Middle East, every day is 9/11.
Exactly. I thought you didn't like Bruce Feiler so much.
I couldn't remember. You know what it is? He has a voice that's a little too namby-pamby.
Oh, okay.
But then I looked it up and I found out that he had done the PBS series, and that I figured, well, if he's PBS, then he has a good. But his voice is a little off-putting to me, but his message is really, really. I was very impressed with the book. Have you read the book?
Yeah, and it was one of our SOSS recommendations. Yeah.
Right.
Abraham, that's the title of the book?
Abraham, yeah. And it's what each of the three Abrahamic religions believe about Abraham. And the one word that keeps coming out too for me is that he said Abraham has faith in God, but that he also challenges God.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the word challenge is hard for me to understand, or God, in the same, to challenge God. But I think to me, it's better than to rage at God, I guess. I think it's a little easier for me to understand. But
Well, for years, part of trying to summarize my own approach to all this is that we need to immerse ourselves more in the climate and environment of the Hebrew Scriptures, of the Old Testament. I mean, I think my wife needs to speak to me.
Are you rolling already?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Do you need to talk to me?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
And so what I've been saying when I first started these Bible studies, when we did the Wednesday group in there, I would talk about the fact that God is a God of relationships. Relationships are the thing. And you have to make up a list of what relationships require. Relationships, in order to survive, require, maybe they don't require raging at the other person in the relationship, but they do require expressing, what was the word you used, Barbara? The frustration or the
challenge.
Challenge. It requires challenge, and God created that. God God's not surprised when human beings come with the grievance and lay it at God's feet, because you know what? Turn 10 pages in the Bible and you're going to find God coming to the feet of human beings and laying a grievance. And it's not always just about grievance, but there's times of great celebration and joy and all kinds of good things. But this part of our relationship to God, I think, at least in the tradition of Christianity I grew up in, is gone. It was gone. Because the human being never would complain or have anything to say against God. They spent a lot of our time in the Pentecostal church on bent knees and, subservient to God and saying, help me to accept life, the way you're dishing it out to me.
Yeah.
But you get into, especially Abraham and Moses' relationship to God, they're like two neighbors. And they're not always happy with each other.
Right. We're seeing God through the lens of human reality.
Yeah.
Which is the only way we
Right.
can see. But, our relationship with God is a very human one.
It
We
is.
see it from that side only, and we try to make sense of what the other side, what God's side is, and it's not always easy to figure out. And I love to go back to that story about in Islam about when the angel said, "Why are you creating this creature? Because it's going to be nothing but trouble," and it happened anyway. So there must be some reason for us troubled human beings, to be here, and it's not always easy to figure out.
No, and when you were talking, I had a thought I don't think I've had before, and that is, we always think about we're human and God is God, but remember, God made us. And that whole thing of the image of God in us.
And God blew his spirit into us.
And so,
as we're born.
I get it, God is above and beyond, but
Relatable.
God is still the God that made human beings. Like and so some of what stirs in us isn't so alien to God. It's not, and that's why the angels would say to God, what are you doing? Like,
Right.
you know what you're doing? You're crossing the boundary here. You're creating something that has 1 foot in each side.
Yeah.
And there we have it. But I think we miss, I got criticized when I was first being preacher and teacher in the big Presbyterian church, because I would say, I hear all these people arguing about the divinity of God, right? The seminarians are putting together the creeds of the divinity. Or divinity of Jesus.
I was going to say,
No,
I think we
the
assume
divinity
that.
of Jesus. It's really important, the divinity. Yeah. Jesus was God. I could care less. What I want is, I think we have over-godded Jesus, and we have lost the humanity of Jesus. We've lost it.
I agree with you, and that's why I kind of thought that, another way of looking at that relationship, that Jesus is no more or less divine than all the rest of us.
I
Right.
agree.
There's that spark in all of us. And, some humans have the ideas above my ideas, whether they've been more blessed or they're just smarter. And sometimes I need to listen to those people with knowledge. But sometimes I feel like I have every right. I'm just as divine as the next person, and I can make or break, my world around me by what my personal opinions are. A lot of people don't feel that way. A lot of people in Islam don't feel that way either. Consult first the Quran, the Word of God, then consult the experts. I like doing that, but in the end, there is a concept called ijtihad. You do your own struggle.
Right.
And it's perfectly acceptable, and a lot of Muslims forget that. They say, well, if you're just making up your own mind, you're doing bid'ah, you're doing something that's against. No, you're doing something that you feel is right. If it's wrong, you may come to realize that. But we've all been given this gift to do that. And I think it is a gift. It's, it's what cements our relationship with God.
Yeah, and I think that the way we discover it is that I'm distracted a little bit because I see the yoga people are
Oh, are they
coming
supposed to
through
be
the
in
door.
here?
I think she's just coming to set up.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Maybe she's dropping her stuff off.
I don't
Chris will
know.
sort it out.
Oh, Chris
Sorry.
is coming. Okay.
So I feel I'm hesitant sometimes to even say how much I believe this, because I read in the Bible, in the New Testament especially, I'm not convinced that the Trinity, the idea of the Trinity, of Jesus as fully God, was even originally a part of it. I believe it was the discovery that Jesus was fully human. Jesus was human, and you see these filmmakers that make the character of Jesus look like he's some sort of a glazed-eyed, superhuman who floats almost and doesn't have to walk, and I reject it. I just completely reject it.
Right.
Because I think it doesn't do us any good to try to divinize, make Jesus out to be God. It's a dismissal of our own humanity. I think Jesus was an outstanding, amazing human being.
And a wonderful teacher.
Wonderful teacher.
And if we read the words and try to understand them, that's what we have of Jesus. We don't have an otherworldly glow.
No.
We have the words.
Right. We have the witness to Jesus,
And
which
the
is
witness.
it's in front of us.
Exactly.
And as Presbyterians, we're asked to accept that what is said about Jesus in the Bible, as we have it, is the most authoritative source that you can have.
And I don't think it says it's part of a triune God.
No.
I don't think anywhere Jesus claims that.
No,
So-
he uses words, there are words in the scripture that get lined up in a certain way. There's all this language about the Son of God, but the Son of God was a phrase that was used all the
Or
time.
the Son of Man.
Yeah,
It
Son
was
of God.
used more often, so.
Right.
But you know what? All the argument about that is moot, because if you're listening to what the prophets say, then what does it matter where their position in the hierarchy are? It's like, does that really make that much difference? That we should go to wars over it, or,
Yeah, and I don't know, the longer I live, I feel like the further I get from Christian orthodoxy. Like that's not a good thing, because I don't know how to incorporate anymore the sort of sacrificial lamb theology of, I'm a terrible person and Jesus died and that closes the gap. I don't accept any of that anymore. I don't. I think my faith, my practice of my faith is actually more, I don't know, one of my friends who was a colleague as a teacher said, "You're a humanist." You're a humanist.
Yeah.
And I want to say, yeah, you know what, maybe I am a humanist.
right.
Because I think humans deserve a break in the God language. Like, we beat ourselves up, we invent sacrifices or rituals that, to me, are meaningless.
Yeah, after reading a lot of Joseph Campbell, and you see the son as a sacrifice in societies and civilizations that predate the Levant
Yeah.
and and the Hebrew nation, you see the same thing. Like the river god in the Nile, every year you sacrifice, some crops, and then the Nile overflows its banks, destruction comes, but then it recedes and it leaves behind fertile land.
Yeah.
So you sacrifice the sun, that theme.
Yeah. The dying and rising God. The
Exactly.
dying and rising God.
And it's also in Mesoamerican societies too. It seems like it's a common theme throughout the world. So there has to be, Christians, the early Christians were just following along
Yeah.
in what was popular with humanity. And it made sense. Why would this wonderful person have to die? Well, there must be a reason. So, then it evolves into this, and now we're worshiping a human being as God, and we don't even hardly know what God is, yet, we're making God out of this wonderful teacher. Why can't we just have this wonderful teacher and the words, it's like, do we need to argue about this? And you know what? I don't fault anybody who believes other than me. I really don't. At one time I thought, oh yeah, no, I might be completely wrong, I don't know, and I'm fine with that. Just don't come to blows over it.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
Wars are fought over it.
Yeah. That's what's stupid, I think. I might be wrong. I might be wrong about that too.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm wrong, but I'm going to go ahead with what
But
I
I'll
think.
go with it.
And my struggle is my critique of Christian theology and of orthodoxy, the right way. I get the strongest critique of it when I read the Bible. That's the part that's unsettling to me. If I read the Bible, like my sermon on Sunday, I was talking about how we did the creation story and how upset I get when I realize that the original story, it's not an opinion, but the original Hebrew says that God scooped up some earth and made an earthling. It was not a man. It was not. And all the crap that follows from the teaching that this first one was a man, I mean, you could fill encyclopedias with the consequences of teaching that the first earthling, and I know some of my friends who watched it online, it was, because I even went so far as to say that the pronouns for the first earthling are he, she, and him, and her. It's that in our language today, that is the Adam. That's the
Isn't
first
in Hebrew,
being.
it's Adama, which is a complex thing. It's not either gender.
Right. No, right.
Yeah.
It isn't either gender, but because of how the story unfolds, it is both genders. It's not genderless, it's both genders. And then, I go on to talk about how
Really getting there now.
it's what?
You're really going to stir it up now.
I know, and
But
I
the
think
first
that-
person, I can't even remember the actual scientific for a person to be both genders.
Transvestite. Or hermaphroditic.
hermaphrodite.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I was trying to think of.
That kind of strikes a sympathy for transvestites, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I
might be
got a
the original
transvestite
human being.
was dressed
When
in
I
a
said
different.
from the pulpit, I don't see why people are so shocked to learn that there are human beings who feel that they are both male and female. The ancient text says that originally the human being had male and female in one body. And then God looked and saw that won't be as much fun. That's not good. They ought to have more fun. So the ish was withdrawn from the isha. That's the Hebrew. It's the poetry. And the two words ish and isha, because of the way they're spelled, are supposed to reinforce the idea that this is really two now from one, but that the one had the two in it. And that, and then somebody else reminded me, I've said this before, that in birth, all human beings are female to begin with. All of them. And the male genitalia have to develop later. And
To get hormonal changes in the female's body that creates either anyway. And you can see when they show you pictures of these really rudimentary human beings, or that you can't tell.
No.
That's why they can't tell you until it's so much farther along. Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, it's not so much what is it, it's what is it becoming.
right, right, yeah. So
And then I hear, in our culture, plenty of people who say, I don't know, I guess it's anti-education, who go, what are you talking about?
Right.
You're making all that up. Like that
Mm-hmm.
isn't right. And God didn't
Mhm.
make Adam and Steve, God, all that stuff. And it's so popular
So silly.
to approach life in an anti-education point of view.
Right.
And-
Let's not pay attention to science.
No, and so why I don't know, why am I the one put up in the pulpit to talk? Because I'm the one, I'm the one who was educated. I was called to be educated. You're called to learn these kinds of things. And then I had a friend in seminary who graduated a year ahead of me and then came back for lunch one day at the seminary and said, you must just quit reading the books and stop learning what you're learning, because the church has no ear for what we're learning.
Right.
The church has no interest in knowing what we're learning.
Church is invested in a cultural norm that says males are supreme,
Yeah,
and they are the head of the household, they are the head of, and females should be quiet in church, subservient,
yep.
and it's not just Christianity,
No,
it's all three of those Abrahamic faiths that bias the teachings towards what the cultural norms are, not the other way around.
Right, and that's exactly, so the idea, in the church I grew up in, the Pentecostal little minority, in the spectrum of all people of faith, the Pentecostal church is a little tiny speck. But what do we learn? What did we learn in Sunday school and all the rest of it was, do not be conformed to this world. Do not be a part of the thoughts, and you have to be conformed to what God has to say. And then, I look
That's
into
very
this.
Islamic, that's completely Islamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what? I look back on the church I grew up in and I go, okay, there were some things that we didn't conform to the populace with. We had to dress funny. Women were not allowed to wear makeup, and we couldn't go to the movies. Oh my gosh, you could never, ever, ever go to the movies. The movies were the den of Satan. Like, and so yeah, we had our way of not conforming to the world. But you look at the pathway of culture that's described, especially in Genesis, and you go, we've done nothing but conform to the world.
Yeah.
We've conformed to the Greco-Roman idea about women, about culture. We're so lost in the contemporary culture. We think that's the gospel.
Right. And it's not so contemporary. We've had that
Yeah.
for, I was going to say as long as I can remember. No, go back.
But-
Thousands of years, that's what,
Well, and that's how you find the truth,
Yeah.
right? You go back to what we've always believed all the time.
But if you pay closer attention to some of the scripture, it does not say what we think it says.
Right.
And in all three traditions, it does not say what some of us now take for gospel.
Yeah, and we've built our whole communities and culture and rules of etiquette and everything built on this idea that, the hard truth of the gospel is that females were created to be servants of males, and that males fail in their responsibility when they don't snap the whip and bring females into line, and that's gonna, so that those are the things that God is upset about. The wickedness. The wickedness is you're not doing what I've told you. And I grew up in a church that took all these cultural mores and almost invisibly answered the question I asked, which was, what is God so upset about? And they filled in the blanks. God's upset because girls are, they're wearing skirts that are above their knee.
Or they're wearing pants.
Or the pants. Oh, that's even
You're
more
trying
so.
to be a man.
Yeah. Any woman,
No, my legs
Yeah.
are cold.
any woman that wears pants
Yeah.
is violating the law of God. And then they go to Jeremiah, and they read in Jeremiah, to wash your heart clean of wickedness, so that you may be saved. How long shall your evil schemes lodge within you? and they just insert the
Must-
cultural norm.
Must be the pants.
Must be the
You're
pants.
forgetting when everybody wore a robe. Then how did you differentiate it? Or when everybody was naked? What do you know?
Well, you know, when they wore the robe, I'm sure there were women's robes and there were
Men's robes.
And you don't let a woman be seen wearing the man's robe.
Depends on what color it is or which way you button it. It's like crazy. But we do this to ourselves and we think it's been from time immemorial. You know, it's like, you can think of examples where you're told outright that these things are not true. When Jesus meets with Martha and Mary, and, you know, I forget which one's which now, but the one says, you know, my sister, she's sitting and listening to all this stuff, like one of the men,
Yeah,
and
that's
she's
Mary.
not helping me in the kitchen.
Martha is the worker.
Right, Martha's up
Just the
slaving
Mary
away in
is
the kitchen.
the
Feeling
beer.
resentful.
Martha's the doer and Mary's the
Mary's-
beer.
And Jesus' reply is, you know, some people are Marthas and some people are Marys, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's not doing anything wrong, and neither are you, for instance, you know?
Yeah.
This is the roles that you have chosen, and it's like, you would expect if he was steeped in the culture, he would say, yes, Mary, get the hell out of the conference of men here. You have to, you know, but that's not what Jesus says.
No, it isn't.
And when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was teaching, the women, he had wives, he had women in the community that listened to everything he said. And when he passed on, when some of his companions were hung up on, well, what did he say about this? Well, what did they say about that? Before he died, he said, go to Aisha. She knows me best. She knows she had most of the hadith that is passed on today, the prophet's words, and she was the one that the men went to when they needed clarification. And he said, do that. So where is this idea that women can't teach men? It's just culture taking over the place of what the scriptures and say.
And I think that's what God is upset about.
Maybe.
You know?
Yep.
Let me ask you a question. Is it still true that you know that a shirt is a woman's shirt because it buttons is left over, right?
Right. Yep.
What is that about?
I have no idea. I just read recently something about that. It was the way people put things, like, not pockets, but I
You're
don't know.
going to insert the
Put your hand
important
in,
paper
or
in there?
it's something like that. It
Just-
didn't seem like that makes no sense. They were saying Napoleon's always pictured like that. Okay, well, men put their. I don't know about that. There were a couple of other takes on it too, but I'm not sure they know why.
So that's an example of a cultural moray, an idea that is built into the very fabric, literally, into the fabric of our lives, which that's what you know.
And you know it's true.
You know it's true. You know it because if I go to the closet and I pull out a dark coat like this, and then I go to button it up, and I can't button it, I go, oh, this is a woman's coat.
Right.
That's
Can't wear
how I know.
that.
This is
Can't
a
wear
woman's
that.
coat.
Or if it's pink.
Yeah. Right.
And the truth about the pink blue thing was, years ago, it was just the opposite. The pink was the male color. When you see the creche on people's front lawns,
Yeah.
what color is Joseph wearing?
Yeah.
Joseph is wearing pink,
Right.
and Mary is wearing
Mary's
blue. It was because in the past it was reversed. Now all of a sudden it's somehow gotten switched around. It's a color, folks. Come on. It doesn't signify, masculinity or femininity.
No,
It's a
and
color.
how much do you know? How much do you know? Like one of the teachers in the preschool just found out today. She's pregnant. She just found out today she's having a girl.
Mm-hmm.
How much information are you really given when someone tells you they're having a girl? And how much of it is, oh, open the floodgates because all the expectations about being a girl are going to now flood into that person's life. Is it coming from that being? I don't think so. And yet,
You're already limiting probably what
yes,
what the
yes.
expectations for that person is, as opposed to the other sex.
Yeah, what's it mean to be a girl? Well,
Yes, and in a lot of cultures, it means not so good, not so much.
yeah.
I remember years ago when I first started going to the mosque, and people would ask you, do you have children? Yes, I have children. I have 2 daughters. Oh, they would say, you can always try for the boy. And I'm thinking, why? I'm fine with the girls. I'm like, but it's so ingrained in the culture. It's not, like, it's not one is better than the other. It shouldn't be. And if it is, it's we who have made it so.
Yes. And so then, again, I go back to Jeremiah, and I wonder how much of these kinds of things that we're talking about now are the kinds of things that Jeremiah was upset about. It's like, let God be God and let life unfold. But no, you guys go off and you try to remake the world. You try to remake life. The whole complaint that pops up from time to time, is you have other gods. Other gods. What does that even mean? Well, I think this culture has plenty of other gods.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them we would be surprised about. What does it really mean to insert our own culture, our own ideas, what's male and what's female? Because I said that comment about how in the sermon that the first earthling was a male and a female combined, and why are we so surprised when people report that while they've been living as a male, they actually think that the dominant side of themselves is their female. And I said that. And in the middle of the afternoon, I got an email from a friend I haven't talked to in a long time. He watched that, and he's in the beginning of the process of a sex change. And he said, you have no idea what it means to me to hear that there is room in the Christian church and faith for what I don't have any choice about.
Right.
And then I'm humbled by it because I think I don't have any idea what people live with sometimes. But we got to make sure we keep our boys and girls separate.
Keep them straight.
Don't let them get confused.
Look at the toys. When I was little, and I think a lot of girls felt this way, we liked dolls, we played with our Barbies, but I always wanted one of those racing car things. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And I asked for it, I don't know how many years in a row, and no, that's a boy toy.
Yeah, that's not for you.
And when I went over to my cousins, who were all boys, we played with the car. That was great. They even had those guns. I know guns,
No, that's...
but they had the air guns. And
you pump up the air gun. And
how cool was that? And you shot wads of dirt at each other as you're running around. It was far more exciting than Barbie. Come on. But no. So finally, my sister who's younger, finally they relented. They gave her the slot cars when she... Could have done this a few years earlier, folks, but it like that idea that, you have to conform to the norm, even if your kid is telling you, I want this because it's fun.
Yeah, but they don't want you being confused about your sexual orientation.
Right. And I wasn't.
No,
I just want to have fun.
And that doesn't cause
Girls
it
just
anyway.
want to have fun.
That doesn't cause it. That's not...
Right. Oh, she's going to turn into a lesbian if I give her this car. Come on. I'm driving a car now. I haven't suddenly become a lesbian. I mean, it's some of the stuff that we laugh about now, but it was so prevalent then. Now, and you think, well, what's to come?
But there's still a lot of it that's still prevalent. It might not be prevalent to you, but it is to a lot of other people.
Yeah, there's, the culture in the world my sister lives in, which is cowboys and, farms and tractors and everything. The boys are the boys, and the boys are, what they're going to do. They're going to drive the tractors and everything else, and the girls are going to be cooking. It's not Now,
whether you like it or not.
they do bust out of it a little bit.
Yes.
But what I chuckle about, again, going back in my college days, my college professor, who I really liked, I liked him and his wife. I spent a lot of time over at their house. Holidays, my family didn't even know where I was, so I would be with them. And I remember we got into a discussion at the table about homosexuality. And this guy, they had a little boy named Jamie and another daughter, and he just leaned into the table and he goes, well, I'm just glad to know my son will never grow up to be gay. And I was like, what? Yeah, we all know that what causes young boys to be gay is absentee fathers. And I'm never going to be absent from my son's life. I'm involved in my son's life, and I'm going to be. So there's a guy at the door. Ring the doorbell. Ring the doorbell. There's a doorbell.
Do you want me to go let him in?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, because I don't think he knows what your
Yes.
hand
Ring the
signals.
yes, ring
There it
that.
goes.
Did he do it?
Yeah, he did.
No, you'll let him in.
Okay.
He's not. There's a little note right in front of him that says ring the doorbell.
Now.
I know. But so I go back to those days, and when that guy said that, I thought to myself, the world is hopeless. The world is hopeless. Being absent from your son's life isn't a good thing, but that's not what makes gay men gay.
Right?
It's just not.
That's what makes people poor too, right?
Yes, that's right.
And where did that all start? But with the welfare program that said that the woman would not get any money for the children if there was a male in the house. So it was the government that started it
Yeah, that's right. The government,
Second welfare.
to separate families to begin with.
and it goes on in the state level of subsidy for preschool. If a woman walks into the subsidy office and applies for help and assistance, the first question is, are you married? If you're married, you don't qualify.
Exactly.
Right.
The assumption is you got a man to take care of you.
Yeah, so then one of the first families we sort of explored all this with was the family that had 4 children. They had quadruplets, right?
Oh.
Instead of twins.
All at once?
Yeah, all at once. They had
Yikes.
4 kids all at once, 3 girls and a boy, and then they had another boy.
Oh, God.
And they came and we enrolled them into school, everything, and we said, you guys definitely will qualify for the subsidy. And she's like, yeah, I will. So somebody else said, no, you won't, because you have a husband. He goes, he's not my husband. He's not my husband.
It's just that guy.
He just happens to be the father of the kids.
Yeah.
He's not my husband.
He's that guy.
And then, well, does he live with you? Depends on who asks.
Exactly. Yeah, they know that you have
Yeah.
to hide the fact.
Yeah, you just
Which
hide
is
from it.
ridiculous.
It's stupid.
Very stupid. But then it got taken to the other extreme. I remember, and I hate to say anything bad about Nancy Woods, my beloved Nancy Woods from Interreligious Fellowship, but she was always, when families would come, and it was like mother-headed families, no man in the
Right.
picture.
Yeah.
She would always say, you need to work. Didn't matter whether you had 2, 3 infants to take care of. Her push was, you need to get out there and get a job. And what was the job she was almost always pushing them into? Child care.
Of course.
And I could not figure that out. I'd say, Nancy, don't you think it's better if the mother takes care of her own child, and then when the children are a little older, then she can go for some other kind of job, or childcare if she wants to. But it makes no sense to take care of someone else's child when your child needs child care.
Yeah.
And I don't think she ever saw that. But, I felt like saying, what you should say is, why don't you learn about birth control so that your kids can get old enough so that finally you can go out and get a
Right,
job
get a
and not
real
have
job,
to
be able to
take care
support
of
yourself.
little children. Because let's face it, Little children are a drag on a woman's ability to get a job.
Absolutely.
We're trying to convince men of that now when we say, abortions are not all bad. They do help society. Not to mention when they're medically necessary, but, I don't know. But everybody has different ideas of what's progression and what's not.
Well, and Jeremiah says that the measuring stick is truth, justice, and
The American way.
uprightness.
Isn't that Superman?
Yeah, uprightness.
Uprightness.
Doing things right.
Well, that is a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes it's hard to figure out what's the upright thing to do.
I'm just a liberal, that's all. Liberals just confuse things.
That's right.
It's a lot clearer than you're pretending.
No. When you're convinced you're wrong, you're on the right track.
Yes, that's correct. Or if you don't know, just come and ask me, and I'll sort it out for you, and I'll tell you
What's right for you?
what's right. I'll tell you what's right, and you just do that, and you'll be fine.
Aw.
But now instead we're living in the consequence of all of the evil ways, and then these great hurricane storms come and knock us back and make us humble.
Marjorie Taylor Greene says
yes.
they are causing they know how to
They know how to
control
cause
the
a
weather.
hurricane.
Who
Man.
are they? Who are they?
She gives us a lot of power.
But does she mean liberals or does she mean Jewish people? God only knows. She
Right.
could be.
That's right, because there was
It's
a time.
usually always
Right.
they that get blamed for
That's
it.
what John Stewart said. That's what they always accuse Jews of being able to do.
Exactly.
Control the weather.
We are in control of everything, including the weather.
All right, well, so that's enough for today, Barbara. I hope you get
Okay.
all better.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. Slow and steady, right?
Are you taking Paxlovid?
Yes,
Okay.
and it definitely is helping. It just headache and kind of stuffiness, but it is what it is. Reading a lot.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. So at least you feel well enough to read.
Plenty of books. Yep.
Do you need anything, or is there anything?
Now, I've got a lot of neighbors who are very helpful, and Greg delivers my Diet Coke every day.
Oh,
For
good.
me.
That's good.
To have my caffeine fixed, and they deliver